I would like to pass it on to His Holiness Bhakti Gaurav Narayan Swami Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I would first like to thank Sri Banmal Pandit Prabhu and other devotees, those who have given me an opportunity to speak on Bhagavatam today. So today's verse would like to discuss. It's a ninth canto, chapter 10, verse 8. The name of this chapter is The Pastimes of Lord Ramcandra. So first I would like to recite the verse, and then we will read the word meaning, translation and purport, then we will discuss on this verse. Yasatyapasa parivita piturnidesam strainasya chapi sirasa jagruhe savarya Rajyang Sriyang Pranayana Sruhado Nivasam Tekta Yejo Vanangasun Iva Mukta Sangha Yasatyapasa Parivita Pitur Nidesam Trainasya Chapi Shirasa Jagruhe Savarya Rajyang Sriyang Pranayana Sruhado Nivasa Tekta Yedo Vanangasun Iva Mukta Sangha Yasatyapasa Parivita Pitur Nidesam Strainasya Chapi Shirasa Jagruhe Savarya Rajyang Sriyang Pranayana Sruhado Nivasam Tekta Yayo Vanangasun Iva Mukta Sangha. So word by word meaning by Srila Prabhupada. Yaha, Lord Ramcandra, who Satyapasa Parivita Pitu of his father, who was bound by the promise to his wife. Nidesam, the order. Strainasya, of the father who was very much attached to his wife. Cha, also. Api, indeed. Sirasa, on his head. Jagrihe, accepted. Savarya, with his wife. Rajyam, the kingdom. Sriyam, opulence. Pranayanaha, relatives. Surhudaha, friends. Nivasam, residence. Tektva, giving up. Yadav, went. Vanam, to the forest. Asun, life. Eva, like. Mukta Sangha, a liberated soul. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Carrying out the order of his father, who was bound by a promise to his wife. Lord Ramcandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residents, and everything else. Just as a liberated soul gives up his life and went to the forest with Sita. Purport. Maharaj Dasarath had 3 wives. One of them, Kaikeyi, served him very pleasingly, and he therefore wanted to give her a benediction. Kaikeyi, however, said that she would ask for the benediction when it was necessary. At the time of the coronation of Prince Ramcandra, Kaikeyi requested her husband to enthrone her son Bharata and send Ramcandra to the forest. Maharaj Dasaratha, being bound by his promise, ordered Ramcandra to go to the forest according to the dictation of his beloved. And the Lord, as an obedient son, accepted the order immediately. He left everything without hesitation. Just as a liberated soul or a great yogi gives up his life without material attraction. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Yakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavangsya Sri Rupam Sagradatam Saganaratmata Nitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Paridana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Visakha Nitansa He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Mahavadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauravise Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna
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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Rama Rama
Hare Hare.
So here in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami is describing the pastimes of Lord Ramcandra in front of Parikshit Maharaj and assembled sages. Sukadeva Goswami has already explained to Maharaj Parikshit that Lord Ramchandra's pastimes are famous because of his ideal characteristic. And in general, people, they know about Lord Ramchandra's pastimes in detail. So that's why Sukadeva Goswami is describing Lord Ramchandra's pastimes to Maharaj Parikshit in brief. So here in this verse, Sukadeva Goswami is explaining that how Lord Ramchandra was banished from his kingdom. Actually, we all know that the Lord descends in this material world to please his devotees and kill the demons. That's why in Bhagavad Gita the Lord says that paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha duskrutam dharma sanstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge. So in due course of pleasing the devotees and killing the demons, the Lord also establishes the eternal religion in this material world by which people would follow the path of religion and at the end go back to Godhead. So here we see that Srila Sukadeva Goswami is explaining that how Lord Ramchandra appeared by the desire of the demigods to kill the demons and protect the devotees. So Lord Ramchandra, he appeared with his brothers to protect his devotees and kill the demons such as Ravana and his followers. And Lord Ramchandra, though he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he acted like an ideal human being. That's why he's called Maryada Purushottam. He is the best human being who always follow the etiquette of material behavior. So, Lord Ramchandra, he was an ideal king, ideal son, ideal father, ideal husband, ideal friend. So in every respect, we see Lord Ramchandra was acting on the highest principle of religious principles and etiquette. So here we see in this verse, Ya Satya Pasa Parivita Pitur Nidesam. So here Lord Ramchandra, followed the instruction of his father. And father Maharaj Dasarath, who was also a great soul, and he was so fortunate to become the father of the Lord. So he was bound by his promise. So this is the character, ideal character of the Rajarshis. In those days, the kings or administrative heads, so they were also acting like the sages. They were very truthful and they would act for the welfare of the citizens, sacrificing their own comfort. And at the same time, the kings who act like Rajarshi, they were also fully equipped with spiritual knowledge or shastric knowledge. And they were also being advised by the scholars in their assembly. And they knew very well the goal of life. And the kings were supposed to also act as the agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this material world. That's why the kings were worshipped as the Supreme Lord, as the kings were representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maharaj Dasaratha, he was also a Rajarshi who knew the religious principles, who knew the goal of life, and he was acting on the principle to please his subjects. So in that way, Maharaj Dasaratha was a very ideal king and at the same time a sage. And he was very truthful in his behavior. But once he gave one promise. Once Maharaj Dasaratha was fighting a war, and his queen Kaikeyi, who was very beautiful and also was very much loved by Maharaj Dasaratha. So Kaikeyi was actually driving the chariot of Maharaj Dasaratha in that battle. And in that battle, Maharaj Dasaratha was injured. So Kaikeyi, seeing the injured king, she drove away the chariot from the battlefield to save the life of Maharaj Dasaratha. So later on, she served Maharaj Dasaratha, and Maharaj Dasaratha was very much pleased with the service attitude of Kaikeyi. And at that time, being very pleased on her, he gave 2 benedictions to Queen Kaikeyi. But Kaikeyi, she told Maharaj Dasaratha that she would not require the benediction right at that time, she would require the benediction when it would be required to get that benediction. So that means these two benedictions of Maharaj Dasharatha was there, and Kaikeyi had not taken those benedictions, and she had told that she would ask for it at the proper time. So in this way, Maharaj Dasharatha was actually bound by his promise. And sometimes this promise also creates trouble. As we see in the life of Bhismadev. Bhismadev was also bound by his promise. As we all know, that Bhismadev's father, Maharaj Santanu, wanted to marry Satyavati, but Satyavati's father would not agree because already Maharaj Santanu had a great son like Bhismadev, and Bhismadev's previous name was Devabrata. And Satyavati's father was thinking that since the king had a son, so Satyavati's son would not be the king in future. That's why he did not agree to give Satyavati to Maharaj Santanu. And Maharaj Santanu was thinking how could he do injustice to take away the right of Devabrata as the successor of Maharaj Santanu. Because the eldest son becomes the successor of the king to rule the kingdom. That's why Maharaj Santanu was very much in anxiety, and he did not agree to the proposal of Satyavati's father. So he was remaining silent, but he was still in anxiety. And somehow or other, Devabrata, or Bhismadev, who became Bhismadev later on, so he found out what was the problem with his father Santanu. Then he personally went to the father of Satyavati and asked for the hand of Satyavati for the king. And Satyavati's father told that since you are his elder son, so you would inherit the kingdom. So what will happen to my daughter's son? So Devabrata promised that I would never get married. So I would not accept the kingdom. First thing he told, that I would never accept the kingdom. I am promising. Then Satyavati's father told that what would happen if someone else in your family would claim the kingdom. So Devabrata he told that what would happen about your son? He would claim the kingdom. So then Devabrata promised that I will never get married, or I will not accept the kingdom myself. So there would be no son of mine, and I will not accept the kingdom. So Satyavati's father agreed on this promise and gave Satyavati in marriage to Maharaj Santanu. And when Santanu heard this promise of Devabrata, he became so pleased that his son had sacrificed his own happiness by promising not to get married and not to attend the kingdom. So being very pleased, he gave him a benediction that he would die whenever he would desire to die. So Devabrata, who later on became Bhishma because of this promise, and he had promised to protect the kingdom of the king who would be ruling the Hastinapur kingdom. Bhishma had promised to protect the kingdom. So because of his promise, when the time came for the conflict between Pandavas and Kauravas, and they declared a war, so Bhishma was forced to take side of the Kauravas. Though he knew very well the Kauravas were following the path of irreligion, and they would never become victorious in the battle. Still, Vishnudev had to side with the Kauravas because of his promise that he could not go against the kingdom or against the ruler of the kingdom. So in that way, Vishnudev was forced to fight the war of Kurukshetra on behalf of Kauravas. And he knew very well that the Kauravas were going to be defeated, because the truth or religion is in the side of Pandavas, and Krishna also is siding the Pandavas, the supreme absolute truth. So in this way, we see that Vishnudev was bound by his promise, and he was forced to accept the path of irreligion by siding with the Kauravas. As a result, he was vanquished. So here we see Maharaj Dasarath. He was also bound by his promise. And it has been said that in the dynasty of Maharaj Dasarath, the kings were very much truthful to their words. They will not go back from their words. So since Maharaj Dasarath had already promised to Kaikeyi to give 2 benedictions, so now when Kaikeyi wanted those benedictions, at the time of the coronation of Lord Ramcandra, so Maharaj Dasarath was forced to give those benedictions. That's why here it has been stated that Ya Satya Pasa Parivita Pitur Nidesam. The father who was bound by the robe of truthfulness, Satya Pasa. And he had to give those benedictions when Kaikeyi asked them, because he was bound by his promise, bound by his words. So Satya Pasa Parivita Pitu Nidesam. That's why when Kaikeyi asked these two benedictions from Maharaj Dasarath, that Lord Ramcandra was going to be coronated as Yuvraj, Kaikeyi asked that instead of Lord Ramcandra, her son Bharata should be coronated. This was the first benediction. And second thing, since he was afraid that Lord Ramcandra, if he would stay in the kingdom and Bharata would assume the throne, as Bharata was the younger brother of Lord Ramcandra, so Kaikeyi was thinking that there will be revolts in kingdom in favor of Lord Ramcandra. That's why Kaikeyi also wanted the other benediction that Lord Ramcandra should be banished for 14 years from the kingdom. She was thinking that if Lord Ramcandra would be banished for 14 years, that is a long duration of time, and Bharata would be the king of Ayodhya, then in the meantime, within 14 years, he would have established himself as the real king of Ayodhya. And the subjects would have been very obedient to Bharata by that time. So that was the intention of Kaikeyi. Of course, Kaikeyi was very much like a loving mother for Lord Ramcandra. But it was actually the plan of the demigods. If Lord Ramcandra would have stayed as the king of Ayodhya, then the greatest demon, Ravana, would have not been killed. And Ravana was disturbing the demigods. His followers, thousands of followers of Ravana, they were disturbing even the sages in the forest. They are disturbing demigods and also the sages. So there was a big disturbance going on. That's why the demigods had prayed to the Supreme Lord to incarnate himself and kill the demons and protect the devotees. As a result, Kaikeyi was carried away by the bad advice of Manthara, who was her maidservant. So Manthara gave bad advice to Kaikeyi to ask for these benedictions from Maharaj Dasharatha to enthrone Bharata, the king of Ayodhya, and banishment of Lord Ramcandra for 14 years. So Manthara was actually inspired by the demigods to do this. So the desires of the demigods should be fulfilled and the demons should be killed. So this was a pre-arrangement. But anyway, Maharaj Dasarath, he was bound by his words. And now when Kaikeyi wanted his two benedictions, Maharaj Dasarath was very, very upset hearing Kaikeyi's request. And now, since he had promised So he could not go back from his words. And with heavy heart, Maharaj Dasratha, his heart was broken and his head was downwards with great shame, and he had to accept the situation and has to allow Lord Ramcandra to go to the forest. So Maharaj Dasratha was actually scolding Kaikeyi for this kind of asking for this kind of benediction. But he could not go back from his promise. So that's why it is said that Pitur Nidesam. Though Lord Dasarath, King Dasratha didn't want Lord Ramcandra to go to the forest. He wanted Lord Ramcandra to be the king of Ayodhya. But still, he could not do so to fulfill his promise. So Lord Ramcandra got the order of Maharaj Dasratha to go to the forest. So Strainasya chapi sirasa jagruhe savari. So here Sukadeva Goswami is using the word straina. Straina means who is a henpecked husband who is carried away by the wife, or who is very much attached to his wife. That person is called straina. And whatever the wife says, the husband follows. Instead of the wife following the husband follows the wife. So here, Maharaj Dasratha has been described as Straina by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as he could not resist the desire of Kaikeyi and had to follow the promise he had given to Kaikeyi. So he had to obey the desire, or he has to fulfill the desire of Kaikeyi. That's why he's here called Straina. Straina Sriyam, Chapi Sirasa Jagruhe Savari. So Lord Ramchandra's father Dasaratha, when gave this order to Lord Ramcandra to go to the forest. So Lord Ramcandra, as a dutiful, obedient son, because Lord Ramcandra was also establishing the duty of an ideal son. So he acted like an ideal son. So people in this world would follow Lord Ramcandra and learn from him how to respect the order of the father. So Lord Ramcandra accepted the order of Maharaj Dasratha on his head without objecting. And Savarya, and not only he accepted this order with his wife. Though Lord Ramchandra's wife Sita Devi was not banished by Maharaj Dasrath, but she, as an ideal wife who follows the husband, in every respect, in all different situations. That's why Sita Devi was an ideal wife, and she was very faithful to her husband because she was the incarnation of Lakshmi Devi. So since Sita Devi wanted to go with her husband, initially Lord Ramcandra forbade her, but Sita Devi gave the argument that it is her duty to follow the husband. If a husband stays in the forest, the wife is also supposed to stay with the husband in the forest. But if husband is staying in the forest and wife would stay in the palace, it will be very awkward for the wife, and people will also misunderstand. So Sita Devi followed the principle of an ideal wife and went with Lord Ramcandra to the forest. So Lord Ramcandra accepted the order of Maharaj Dasarath with his faithful wife, and also he took Lakshman with him because Lakshman also wanted to go with him. Lord Ramcandra did not want Lakshman to go with him. But Lakshman, who was always acting like an intimate assistant of Lord Ramcandra, and he was always accompanying Lord Ramcandra everywhere. So Lakshmana also wanted to go to the forest with Lord Ramcandra, and Lord Ramcandra allowed him. So in this way, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, three of them went to the forest for 14 years. So here, Sukadeva Goswami says, Rajyan Siyang Pranayana Suhruda Nivasam Tektva Yayo Vanam. So Lord Ramcandra, he gave up his kingdom, though he was the rightful heir of the kingdom, to fulfill the promise of his father, Maharaj Dasarath. He gave up Rajyam, this kingdom. And then Sriyam, opulence, material opulence. Material opulence comes with the kingdom. So when Lord Ramcandra gave up his father's kingdom, also he gave up the material opulence attached to the kingdom. Pranayana, and he also gave up the relatives, those who are related, and Suhrudo. And Lord Ramcandra, he also gave up his intimate friends, through the well-wishing friends. And with this Nivasam and his opulent residence in the palace. So Lord Ramcandra gave up all these things not with a heavy heart. He gave up all these things with a great pleasure. He had no repentance or no sorrow for giving up all these things. Though it is very difficult to give up all these things. That's why I said Dustejya. very difficult to give up. Yadusteja Khetisuta Sadanarthadara. The kingdom, the children, the relatives, the wife, so this is and the material opulence. These are called dusteja, very difficult to give up. Because Partha Sada Suravarai Sadayavaloka. Because even the demigods in the heavenly planet, they also desire all these material opulence. They desire these relatives. So, when demigods are desiring, then what to speak of human beings? That's why these things are called very difficult to give up. But Lord Ramcandra was very much pleased to give up all those things which are very difficult to give up for others. He was very much pleased. And how he was very much pleased? Na asun iva mukta sangha. Here, Srila Sukadeva Goswami gives the example. He compares Lord Ramcandra with liberated souls. As liberated souls, those who are not attached to anything material, neither land nor family members, wife, children, relatives, or nor material opulence. And even the liberated souls, they are not even attached to their own body. Generally, we see in the material world, people are attached to their material body. And with body, they are attached to family, relatives, material opulence. So people are attached to all these things. And at the same time, ultimately, everyone is attached to his own life. No one wants to give up his life. No one wants to die. Though death is certain, still no one wants to die. When Yaksha asked the question to Maharaj Yudhishthira, that what is the most astonishing thing in this material world? So that time Maharaj Yudhishthira told, Ahani ahani bhutani gatsantiha yamalaya. That we see that every day the living entities, they are going to the abode of Yamaraj. Means they are giving up their life, dying. Sesam jivitam ichanti. But the rest of the people, they think will remain here forever, will never die. Kimas sarjam atah para. What can be most astonishing thing than this? We see every day people are dying, but we are thinking we will never die. Because no one wants to die. And everyone is afraid of death. But those who are liberated souls, those who have given up attachment to their body, to their family, relatives, material opulence, they are never attached to their life here even. So when the time comes, they give up their life here very happily. So Eva Mukta Sangha, Asun Eva Mukta Sangha. Like liberal souls give up their life here very happily. In the same way, Lord Ramcandra, he gave up all these material opulences, the kingdom, the residence, the family, relatives, all these things very happily, just to carry out the order of his father. And in that way, he took all the trouble of living in the forest with his wife and brother, and he was happy in that situation, that he was carrying out the order of his father. And as a result, when Lord Ramcandra went to the forest, he killed so many demons. And ultimately, the king of all the demons, Ravana, was killed by Lord Ramcandra, and this earthly planet was protected by Lord Ramcandra, and the desires of the demigods was fulfilled. So we'll stop here. If anyone has any comments or questions. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, is there any collection of any Ramayana pastimes with Lord Jagannath anywhere? Or
Oh, actually, it has been stated that when Lord Ramcandra was in the forest and he was traveling from one place to another, he also came to Jagannath Puri. He also came to Odisha, and in near Remuna also there is a place where Lord Ramcandra had shot the arrow, and the Ganga water had come out for Sita Devi to take bath. And also Lord Ramcandra visited Jagannath Puri and also got darshan of the Lord. So that much connection is there. And in Jagannath Puri also, the festivals of Lord Ramchandra's pastimes are also observed. So Lord Krishna also came to Jagannath Puri. Lord Krishna, Lord Ramchandra, they all came. So that is there. But no specific pastimes are mentioned.
thank you.
Correct.
Maharaj, I have a little bit of a practical how to apply this in common day life question. Like, so Maharaj Dashrath, when he was asked from Kaikeyi about the promise, he like was in a position where he was forced to submit to that promise. But in our everyday life, how do we, like, should we also give importance to promises rather than Krishna consciousness? Because for Dashrath Maharaj, Ram was everything. He was like the most Krishna conscious person in that kingdom, but he had to submit to the promise. So how do we practically see this, Maharaj?
So we learn from this incident that as I expressed narrated the story of Bhishmadev, how he was also bound by promise, and because of his promise he was in trouble, and he had to fulfill that promise. The same thing also with Maharaj Dasarath. because of his promise, he was in trouble. He had to ask Lord Ramcandra to go to the forest. That's why from these two incidents we should take lesson that we should never promise for anything. Like we see, Arjuna also sometimes he promised to do something and he was in trouble. And Lord Krishna had to step in and save Arjuna. Like Arjuna promised that he would kill Jayadratha before the sunset. And it was completely impossible for Arjuna to kill Jayadratha before the sunset. So Krishna had to interfere in that situation to protect Arjuna. So he had to hide the sun disk with his Sudarshan Chakra, so everyone thought it was evening. So Jayadratha, who was hiding, he came out. Then Krishna immediately removed the Sudarshan Chakra, and it was day again. And Krishna told Arjuna, now you kill him. So Krishna had to interfere in that situation. That's why as devotees, we should not promise like this. We have only one promise, that we surrender to Krishna and serve him with our words, body, mind, and words. That promise we take. But we don't promise anyone to do anything. But of course, if we say something, we should be very truthful. Because the devotees are expected to be truthful. But sometimes if something has to be lied or something has to be done, then if it is for Krishna, then it is okay. Like Krishna says, mat nimitta krutang papam dharmaya apikalpate. Krishna says that if someone does something sinful for me, then that is considered dharma. That is not a dharma. And we hear the great Acharya in Srirangam, he stole money, wealth from people to build Rangnath temple. So that was dharma. So we cannot, because they are great acharyas, we cannot do that. But still, we should understand the principle that for Krishna or Krishna service, we can do anything and that will be considered dharma. Okay?
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So, we'll stop here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, Banwal Pandit Prabhu and all the devotees who are participating in this program. Hare Krishna.
On behalf of entire Krishna, we express our deepest gratitude to Holiness Bhakti Gaurav Narayan Swami Maharaj. Is it Narayan? Okay. So let us express our gratitude by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Please visit Boston, Maharaj, if you get a chance.
Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
We will be happy to have you anytime.
Okay, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.